down the coast to us here in Southern California. And I guess we'll start off with, I think, probably one of the most important questions that anybody should know about the candidate that they're voting for. Dogs or cats?
Oh gosh. You told me they'd be softballs, Kira. Come on. I think I'll go with cats.
Oh.
Hi, John. Where's your vote?
Why, this is why.
Depends on the type of dog. There's some kinds I like.
Okay, so that was a hugely controversial question.
Sorry. Should I give you a political answer? I like them. I love them both equally.
Very good. Very good. Okay, fair enough. Just so everybody knows, I'm a dog person, but I have been known to tolerate a cat from time to time. Kevin, let's start at the start. Why did you decide to run for governor? You got a nice job as a representative. You're representing the 6th District, right? Very well. Your constituents seem pleased. You've really made a mark for yourself in the assembly. Why would you step out of that comfort zone to run for governor?
Well, one person inspired me to do it. It was one of my constituents. His name's Gavin Newsom. Now, let me just first say thank you to Kira and to Jen and to Jennifer and the entire Red State team. And the entire Red State team, how's that?
Better.
Better? For being like such a beacon of truth. Truth has been kind of hard to come by in this state. And you guys have just been absolutely amazing.
Our pleasure.
And, you know, we are so fortunate to have you here telling the truth in California with your tremendous coverage. I also want to thank Roxanne, I don't know where she just went, who has been an absolute godsend and has helped organize today's event and has been, you know, sort of keeping me on track and has some great advice and is applying her skills in politics and acting to help the campaign. So thank you, Roxanne, for everything you do. And I saw SJ somewhere. She's over there. There she is. Who's been just a total champion, like an abundance of energy, and has rallied the forces and has produced these incredible memes and just doing absolutely everything. So thank you for everything you're doing, SJ, and organizing tonight's event. And the owners, Tony and Evelyn, for opening up. I just got a quick tour of the restaurant. I've never seen any place like this, so I'm really honored to be able to do this event here. Okay, what was the question? Why am I running?
Why are you running?
So I actually did not get involved with the recall with any intention of becoming a candidate. You know, I had been fighting at the Capitol for 5 years and against the one-man rule we've had under Gavin Newsom for the last year and a half in every way I could, with the lawsuit and with resolutions to terminate the state of emergency and with resolutions at the county level to protest the lockdowns and so forth. And obviously there were the battles before that with AB 5 and everything else. And I, you know, joined forces with the recall because I saw it as bringing a whole new element to the equation. You know, putting the mark of the people directly on our state government, a citizens movement that could really change things. And so, you know, last year I went around the state and did like 50 different events in support of the recall to try to just support the people who are on the front lines making this thing happen. And so, you know, I only started thinking about running when I heard from a lot of the people that I'd met along the way in events throughout the state, and started thinking, you know, maybe I could carry the torch of this movement across the finish line. And that's very much how I conceive of this. Is like, yes, I'm a candidate for political office, but I'm really just one participant in this historic movement. And, you know, having spent 5 years in the legislature right now, I think I'd know how to answer the call for change that the recall represents with the fundamental reforms we need at the Capitol and the new direction that we need for the state, which is really important because we're going to have another election coming up in another year. And so we're going to need to demonstrate, you know, we're going to need to provide evidence that we're moving in the right direction so that the movement will continue. So this isn't just a one-off event.
Let's pick up on that, Kevin. And by the way, if you have a question for Kevin, there is the lovely Roxanne. You raise your hand, she'll come over to you and grab the question and relay it to us. So Kevin, as a voter, this is what's on my mind. You will have 1 year in office. When you win the governorship, you will have 1 year to prove yourself to all of California, not just conservative voters or Republican voters, but all of California, that you can take serious steps to improve our lives. What will you do starting day one to help make those changes that will be visible, right? Because there's some things you can do that are a tone shift or might take longer. Is there anything you can do that you think might make a measurable difference in the lives of Californians starting on day one or week one?
Yes, absolutely. And by the way, this is the argument that I make to people of all party affiliations, which, by the way, is in the nature of this recall. It's to attract people of all partisan affiliations to it. But, you know, for people who are reluctant maybe to, let's say, cross party lines or whatever the case may be, I say, look, actually you're not signing on for 4 years. You're signing on for 1 year. So if there was ever a moment to take a chance on change, this is it. You know, see if things improve. And if not, you can vote to return to the way things were next year. The political racketeering that we have. You can go back to that if you want. But yes, that is why it's so important, Kira, on day one to be able to actually set things in motion, to set a new direction for the state in motion. So I would terminate the state of emergency right away. I think that it's about time. It's been a year and a half. We don't have endless emergencies in America. We don't have endless indefinite autocracies in America. And that causes all state and local emergency orders to lapse automatically. So I think that's the most important thing. Next thing is make sure every California school is open, full-time, 5 days a week, no excuses, no masks required. And then, you know, Gavin Newsom, he loves executive orders, right? He loves executive orders. But the thing about executive orders is you can undo them with executive orders. So for every executive action that Newsom has taken to violate our rights and erode our freedoms, I take executive action to restore those rights and protect our freedoms. And that means reining in all of these just wonderful state agencies that we have in California. You know, whether it's CARB, the EDD, the Water Board, Department of Public Health. These are all within the domain of executive authority. These are, you know, agencies that issue regulations under the auspices of executive power. So as a new governor, you could issue directives, you could put in a new agency head, and try to tame these state agencies so they actually serve the people of California. So I would begin an immediate process of unwinding not only Gavin Newsom's one-man rule, but a lot of the harmful ways in which state government has entangled itself in the lives of Californians in recent years. But then, yes, I mean, in order to get the sort of, you know, sweeping change that we need in this state, you do need to work with the legislature, right? Mm-hmm. So I would say, look, the era of corruption in California is over. The people have spoken. They want us to do things differently. This is why I have refused all contributions from special interests. Only state legislator to do that, because I've seen that it's lobbyists and special interests that run our capital. That's really the dichotomy that matters more than anything else. We all saw that with AB5, right? The control that they have. And so I would want to try to affect a change in our political culture in that way and say, look, to legislators, if you want to change, if you want to start serving the people of California, that's great. You know, I want to work with you. He'd be a good guy to have around. He'd be useful in a lot of ways. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, very good. Okay, so bring The Rock and Ronald Reagan and Kevin Kiley on a desert island. I want to be in that constituency. Very good. All right, Roxanne, what else we got?
So just apologies, I have 4 kids and I'm 55, so really not a lot of room up here.
You're doing great.
So one was about redevelopment monies that Governor Brown used to have for cities that was taken away, and then a policy question that I already
go back and get that, because this one looks like Kevin needs to just chew on this. So it's what has happened, what's going on with the redevelopment monies that were allocated under Jerry Brown but don't seem to be going anywhere right now. Do you know anything about that or have anything to say about that?
Yeah, so it's kind of a complicated issue, but the redevelopment agencies, you know, were very valuable to some municipalities, but were massively abused by others. I mean, they had these, you know, extraordinary powers of eminent domain, and they just run roughshod over private property rights. So there were a lot of people who thought that, you know, that getting rid of them was a good thing, but then sort of nothing ever came to replace them. And so I do think it'd be good to allow more of that funding to go to the local level, but to be done so in a way that doesn't allow for some of these larger counties to abuse them and to violate individual rights.
This is good. All right, are you ready? I want to point out to everybody before we go up, before Roxanne forgets, Kevin is one of the few, maybe one of the only legislators who has, forfeited your per diem every year since you've been in the Capitol. And I want to know why you think saying no to that per diem was important to you.
Well, it's a lot of money. It's like $40,000 or something, and it's tax free, by the way, for most people. And you'd be amazed how much of what happens at the legislature is done for the purpose of maximizing per diem for members.
Wow.
It's crazy. I mean, they for example, there's a rule in the Constitution that says you don't get per diem if the legislature is out of session for 3 days in a row. And so whenever there's a Monday holiday, we move our Thursday session to Friday just to make sure that there's not the 3 days in a row out, so that the legislators keep getting their per diem. And there's other perks, like, did you know there's a private DMV office right across from the Capitol that only legislators get to use? And so I have never used it. I actually introduced a bill to shut that down. But I've heard it's, great service. You go in, smooth. It's like, it's a good experience, very pleasant. But I kind of think that maybe if our lawmakers had to live by the same rules as everyone else, then maybe, the rules wouldn't be so bad to begin with.
You can't get better than that. I mean, that's what you want to vote for. Somebody who is like, this is not how I would want to be treated if I were, one of the taxpayers. And so I'm not going to take that too. That is a lot of money to say no to, by the way. I think that should go a long way to deciding if you're going to support this man or not. Roxanne?
Speaking of the DMV, sort of motor voter and border issues, and as I'll just say, as a legal immigrant, as are you, what, if anything, can you do to sort of reverse the rewarding of felonious entry and bad things that happen in a sanctuary state?
So because we are, just to repeat so in case you didn't hear, because we are a sanctuary state and we do have issues with motor voter, and of course we've got all of our wonderful DMV issues that have been going on. Kevin, where do you stand on shoring up the immigration process? And we're a border state, so of course this is something that we're all concerned about. We love our immigrant citizens and constituents, but we do feel a little bit stretched with some of the illegal activity that's going on surrounding immigration and surrounding even the idea of who gets an ID and who doesn't. Can you speak to that?
Yes, absolutely. And just to address your immediate point about the DMV, that has been an area that has been rife with fraud we've seen, and it's been mishandled, and the DMV has had to admit that it's actually registered non-citizens to vote. This isn't just some theory. The DMV has actually admitted it. Some of this stuff is kind of like faded from view as the EDD has kind of become the poster child for government incompetence, but and overshadowed it. But the problems at the DMV are still there. But to the broader question of immigration, yes, of course we need to have and value in every way our legal immigrants, and who are so important to the fabric of our society in California. But when it comes to illegal immigration, there are at least 3 ways in which there is major room for improvement. The first comes to just actually securing the border. Obviously, that's mostly within the federal domain, but I think that the governor needs to look at how state power can be leveraged to compensate for some of, let's say, the shortcomings of what's happening at the federal level right now. The second thing is when it comes to actually benefits that attract people over the border. California just had its the most significant expansion of benefits for undocumented immigrants that we've ever seen, and that no other state has, with the budget, the $267 billion budget that Gavin Newsom just signed, that expands Medi-Cal to the undocumented community in a way that no other state has done. And then the third thing is when it comes to actually enforcing immigration law within California. The sanctuary state bill, which you mentioned, Roxanne, was put in place specifically to tie the hands of law enforcement and the immigration authorities in order to benefit a very specific class of people. People who, number 1, are in the state illegally, but number 2, have been detained for a criminal offense. That's one of the common misconceptions about sanctuary policies. If you're someone who is merely in the state illegally, those laws are not meant for you. They're only meant to protect those who have both come illegally and have been detained for a criminal offense.
Okay, thank you. All right, you've got 3 questions.
I'll try to.
All right, let's do. Let's see. You need a pen and paper or something.
No.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
It's like when your waitress comes to the table and there's 10 of you, and she's like, "No, I'm good."
Okay, Roxanne's an actress, so she knows about waiting tables. Yeah. Not an insult. Some of the best people in the world are servers. Tip your server.
Yeah.
All right.
But I have been on TV.
Yes, she has been on TV. Fair enough.
Okay.
She's a successful actress for sure.
Diablo Power Plant, school bonds. But the first question from the very young man over there, who we're happy to see young people get involved. Okay, he goes to school. Is there? And a lot of people have this question. Is there an issue that you see with an ununified California Republican Party? What are you doing personally to address that, and what can we do to not be sort of the third place?
Okay, I'll repeat that. Let's start with that one. So the last question was the Republican presence in California is pretty ununified, disunified, not unified at all, however you want to say it. And it seems like we do have a lot of trouble pulling together to present a united front. So Kevin, how would you unite or work, at least begin to work to reunite the California Republican Party and perhaps even look into making it more of a power player on the politics scene?
Well, I think that the recall has provided a good roadmap, because the recall didn't start with the California Republican Party. It didn't start with politicians like me. It started with people in their communities, a lot of people who hadn't even been involved in politics before, who said enough is enough, I've got to do something, I've got to fight back. And who, would put their lives on hold in some cases, went out every weekend and gathered signatures and built a movement that was like the very definition of grassroots. And I think that the party needs to understand that that is the heart and soul of our party, is the grassroots. And so that is kind of the way I would like to see the party, formed moving forward, is to organize and empower, the people who are living in their communities and working for change in their communities, rather than having it kind of controlled by consultants and other political insiders. And I think that,
Yeah, that's where something comes
All right.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think we have such a golden opportunity right now as an opposition party, because there is so much how it turned out, whether it serves the purposes of your policy goals. And so we completely overhauled the way we did the election last year. We sent millions of ballots to people who did not ask for them. That is fundamentally different than anything that has ever been done. And now they're saying we want to make that the permanent policy. So we're not going to look at whether that served the goals of having a free and fair election. Of course we need to look at that.
Very good. We've got to wrap it up, you guys. But before we go, give Kevin another hand.
All right, one more thing, Call me old-fashioned, but what was so wrong with the system where we all show up on election day, we show up in ID, and then we find out who won that night? What was so wrong with that system?
I want to go back to ink on a finger. Ink on a finger. Drop your finger, get lost. If you can't get to the polls on election day, oh well. That's just me, though. I'm not running for governor. Do you want to? You want him to say that again? Repeat that. What's wrong with the old?
Yeah, what was wrong with the old way of doing things? We all vote at the same time. We present our identification when we do so, and we find out that night who won. I mean, call me old-fashioned.
You make it sound so easy, Kevin. Okay, there are a lot of people, Kevin, as you have pointed out several times in this town hall tonight. This recall was not led by Republicans. This recall was really started by a lot of Democrat voters, many of whom I've met through our AB5 fight, because it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or a Republican if you can't work. Don't nobody care. What is your appeal to Democrat voters? Why should a Democrat voter vote for you? Somebody who's been voting for Democrats this whole time, they feel maybe a little weird or icky about checking R or checking red. What's your message to those voters that aren't traditionally your base, but you intend to serve?
I mean, what do you have to lose? Right? We're already last in everything. Like, we got most homelessness, most poverty, just about the worst inequality, just the worst public schools. During COVID, we had the worst lockdowns, the worst school shutdown. the worst mandates. I mean, almost the worst roads and bridges, highest taxes, worst regulations, worst litigation environment. By many measures, the lowest quality of life in certain surveys. And last year, more people left the state than came. The first time in California's 170-year history that our population declined by 182,000 people. So what do you have to lose? And like I said before, you know, you're just signing on for 1 year. So, you know, if you're not comfortable with a Republican governor signing on for 4 years, take it for a test drive, right? 1 year, see how things turn out. And if they don't turn out well, okay, you can vote for someone else next year. But I think that people will notice a meaningful change in their quality of life. When the government starts doing the things it's actually supposed to do, it does them well, and it does nothing else. That's kind of my formulation, is back to basics.
How will you, and one more, because everybody has to know, everybody wants to know the answer to this question everywhere you go. I think I never have a conversation, Kevin, these days, no matter who I'm talking to, that doesn't at some point get to homelessness.
Right.
That it is the #1 issue, I think, facing a lot of people. So very quickly, before we send you out there to do all the selfies with all of these beautiful faces out here, as governor of California, how will you address the homeless issue?
Well, I mean, and you are right to point out that this is, by actually, when you look at many surveys, Californians cite this as the #1 issue right now. And it's, you look around, you walk around, and it's just horrifying. And Gavin Newsom has made the problem much worse. And he has been the main obstacle to actually doing anything about it. Do you know that right now, California's unsheltered homeless population is 9 times larger than the next closest states? It's truly staggering. And we keep spending more and more money, and the problem keeps getting worse and worse, even though it's improving in other parts of the country. So I actually asked for an audit. As a member of the legislature, you can request an audit, and so I put this together as a very detailed audit of all homelessness-related spending in California. Just the extraordinary that we spend so much money on homelessness. I want to know, where is it going? What are we getting in return? What programs are receiving funding? What are the outcomes in terms of transitioning people out of homelessness and helping them turn their lives around? And so forth. So I presented this before the Joint Legislative Audit Committee, which is a committee of 5 senators and 5 assembly members. And you have to get a majority of each, 3 out of the 5 senators and 3 out of the 5 assembly members, to get the audit approved. And then the state auditor goes out and does it. It's a comprehensive audit. So all 5 senators voted to approve my audit. Oh, and there was also, by the way, a survey that showed 89% of the public supported this idea of an audit. Try getting 89% of people to agree on anything these days. So all 5 senators voted yes, but then the governor's administration testified against it and pressured 3 assembly members to abstain. And so the audit, you know, was 5-0 on the Senate side, 2-0 on the assembly side, and it failed because it didn't get that 3rd vote. And then there was a bill by a Democrat assembly member, Jesse Gabriel, whose district isn't too far from here. I co-authored that bill. It would have been kind of a more modest measure of accountability for homelessness spending. It passed the legislature unanimously, and Gavin Newsom vetoed it. So, you know, what has happened? We continued to spend more money, $12 billion on top of everything else just this year, even though the legislative analyst, which is a nonpartisan sort of think tank for the legislature, said that new money would, quote, quickly dissipate because there is no strategy. And then in March, the governor's own mental health advisor, his mental health czar, said that homelessness in California is not a money problem, it is a leadership problem. And he even said it's a problem of leadership at the state level. So I would bring a new strategy, and I would bring new leadership, which in brief looks like this, is you have to have a shelter of some kind available for every person. That's crucial because under the 9th Circuit's governing decision, you're not allowed to ask someone to move along unless there's a place for them to go. And so that would allow for law enforcement to get them to move along so we don't have people who are living and languishing and dying on our streets in numbers that surpass 1,000 people per year just in LA County. So, sorry, thank you. And then once they're in the shelter, you have to connect them with the needed services that have been shown on the basis of evidence to actually work in other states. I mean, this isn't brain surgery. Other states have figured it out, or at least are getting people the help they need, whether that's mental health counseling, substance abuse treatment, job training, and other needed services. But Gavin Newsom's solution, just spend more money or throw someone in a hotel room, has been shown to be a failure.
Yes, the entire Newsom administration is an abject failure, 100%. Thank you so much, Kevin, Kiley. Give this guy a hand. If you guys want to support Kevin, stick around, take selfies with him, and share those things with all your friends and family. Get bumper stickers. Look at the lovely Roxanne.
Wow, look at that.
And Jack.
And Jack, you've got signs, you've got bumper stickers. I have one on my car, and I actually forced my son to put one on his car as well. He was like, "Who's Kevin Kiley?" I'm like, "The guy you're voting for." And a book. We've got Kevin's book here.
Can I just point out something?
Yes, please.
Like, as a proud nerd, I have to say, I feel you. You're with us, right? You're totally wonky. This book, if you're worried about how long it'll take to read, out of 233 pages, 66 are footnotes. The man.
The footnotes king. Don't you want a guy who understands the footnotes in office in Sacramento? What's that?
Can I add one thing?
Well, go ahead,
I
Rhonda.
just want to say, Kevin Kiley has earned my vote. And also, it didn't cost me $32,000 to hear Kevin speak.
Yeah.
Amen. Okay. Just saying, I'm not saying no names, but all right. But look, this is what it is, though, guys. Let's just like drill down on this for just 1 second. It is not cheap to run a political campaign. Kevin has stepped out on just his love for the people of California and his state return to that glory, that, you know, that California dream that we all still hold in our hearts. That's why we're all still here. We also have that dream. And here's somebody who understands that. I love a politician who says, I just want to get into office and do enough stuff so that I can leave you alone. You know, I like that. So it's not cheap to run a campaign. He's got a book, Recall Newsom. He's got signs. Jack, the lovely Jack, that's right. Look at that smile. You guys, how can you look at that smile? He's got bumper stickers. Kevin, I gotta tell you this story. I put your bumper sticker on my car, and my neighbor across the street told me I'm voting for some other person in the election. He said, I didn't even know who Kevin Kiley was till I saw that bumper sticker on your car.
All right,
like, yeah, that's kind of the point.
Getting the word
now
out.
you do. So those things make a difference.
Business friendly. Sorry, question for because that's what everything is. But could
Sure.
California be business friendly again?
Let's do
Kevin?
let's do this. So please make sure you go to Kevin's website, Kiley for California. Go to his site, sign up. When you're on the email list, that helps too, because volume helps, right? Buy something, donate to his campaign. You would be surprised at the cost of just even doing stuff like traveling. These are costs. A lot of these things Kevin is incurring himself for the love of the job. So please help him out. And we can't, as Roxanne so rightly pointed out, Kevin, I know you've got to get going. We really do. But because we're at a business that has suffered through the lockdowns in the face of watching our governor go to a dinner with 30 other people, $20,000 a plate, while the rest of us aren't even sure where the next meal is coming from. We're sitting at one of those businesses who has had to struggle to stay alive. How can you return California to a business-friendly format? Can we do it?
Well, to answer that in the simplest way, I mean, a lot of the damage is actually done by state agencies. So there's a lot that could be done to simply unwind the terrible regulations that come down from every which agency. But let me make sort of a broader point about this, because, you know, we've had the worst lockdowns, of course, of any state in the country. We've been the 50th out of 50 in terms of what's allowed to be open. But even before COVID-19, California had the worst business environment in the country, the worst regulations, absolutely treated small businesses the worst. And that's kind of like a overall theme of the last year and a half of our lives, is Gavin Newsom has used absolute emergency powers to take everything that was already wrong with California and put it on steroids. So we go from the worst business environment to the worst lockdowns. We go from the worst, most failing public schools to the worst school closures. We go from the least amount of respect for religious liberty to the worst closures of churches and other places of worship. And so that has kind of, I think, created, in a sense, a real opportunity with the recall to not only remove a uniquely bad governor, but to sort of turn the page on all of the long-standing problems that have gotten us to this point and that Gavin Newsom accentuates. And so I think that the stakes in the recall here could not be higher. So I would just, encourage everyone to do everything you can to get the word out these next few weeks, because we have a golden opportunity to really get California moving in a whole different direction, and maybe we can one day start leading the nation in the right ways again.
I want to thank Kevin for being one of 2 legislators to fight for our religious liberties in the courts. And I know as a Christian, it was really devastating that strip clubs and casinos were open and my church had to close. And there are a lot of Christians in this audience right now who felt very isolated, and Jews, of course. And all of you people who worship any God. But I do want to speak to the religious liberty angle. I wanted to thank you personally for what you did, but also to remind people, and back me up on this, Kevin, but to remind people that I think your faith should play a role in your voting. And because it's easy for us to say, oh, politics and faith are separate, but we saw this year that they are not. They're not separate. And I think there are some people who would love you to imagine that they are separate, and so that you, especially you like crazy right-wing evangelicals, you nut jobs out there, if you would just go away, politics would be great. But we have to be able to